Welcome to the breakout session, Developing Our Future Leaders. I'd like to introduce to you Paula McLean. Paula has been a lifelong learner and leader in the nonprofit sector in Canada. She's a former executive director of a mid-sized nonprofit organization in Edmonton and has served on several nonprofit boards. She now makes her home in Chatham, Ontario. I'd also like to introduce Kathy Prohl. Kathy has had many roles within the field of deafblindness that spans over a 40-year period. She is currently the Chief Executive Officer at Sensity, Deafblind and Sensory Support Network of Ontario. Additionally, Kathy is currently the chair of the Deafblind Network of Ontario and has had many leadership roles within the deafblind sector in Ontario. These roles have included working closely with government in the transformation of intervener services. Kathy was also a part of the team that developed the deafblind supplement for the Inter-RAI assessment. Kathy has always had a passion for the education and training of interveners and was lead on a team of professionals in the development of technical competencies for interveners working with adults who are deafblind. On an international level, Kathy is a board member of Deafblind International and supports the secretariat role as a member on ManCom. Kathy has had the privilege to present at conferences on the international, national, and provincial level. Please welcome my very good friends, Kathy Prohl and Paula McLean.
So good morning, everyone. In case you're wondering, I'm the Kathy Prohl of this act today, so just so you know who is speaking to you. I think the number one question in the world today is, where did the workforce go? And I just wanted to share some information from our Canadian census. And according to the last Canadian census, 1 in 5 Canadians is close to retirement. This is an all-time Canadian high in the Canadian census. Between 2016 and 2021, the number of children under 15 grew at a pace 6 times slower than the number of people aged 65 or older. So basically what this is telling us is that the people coming into the workforce are a lot less than the people that are leaving the workforce. So I think, you know, for many of our organizations, retention and recruitment is a major concern. Many organizations, and in particular the one we have, are really facing retention and recruitment issues. And so, you know, we sort of took a deeper dive into things, and, you know, we realized that there are a number of challenges that are facing managers and frontline supervisors. You know, there's a lack of support. You know, a lot of times the managers that are supporting these frontline supervisors are so busy that they don't have the time to mentor their newly appointed supervisors. A lot of times the frontline supervisors don't feel the love. You know what, they're probably one of the toughest gigs in any organization. You know, they have pressure from above, they have pressure from the people they're supporting, they have the pressure from, you know, their teams. So quite often they're dealing with challenges, and sometimes it's not the most rewarding position. You know, inadequate training is really the reason why we've developed the Sensity Leadership Institute. You know, we want to make sure that people have the tools in their toolboxes to do the job. Quite often, you know, I would hear things like, oh, you know, Sammy's a really, really great intervener. I think we should promote them to a frontline supervisor. And you're thinking the competencies are very different, and so they wind up in these jobs and they don't really realize they've actually taken on a career change. Often they don't have the right staff or enough staff. If you are not short-staffed in your agency, could you please put your hand up and share your insights with us? Yeah, I didn't think there would be many hands raised. Frontline supervisors face fear, and it's not just their own fear, but they face the fear of their teams as well. For example, I'm scheduled to work on a Saturday morning. Am I going to end up working alone because everybody else called in sick? The fear of the supervisor. Am I doing a good enough job? Am I recognized for what I do? And I think probably one of the toughest roles of a frontline supervisor is to juggle the change. Quite often, frontline supervisors are in a position where they're having to manage change that they had no control over. It's a situation where they might not understand, why the change occurred, but their job is to manage it and influence and have everyone else on board with it. So there are 6 essential skills for supervisors and managers that we want to talk about today. And these are all woven through the Sensity Leadership Institute as well. And Paula will talk a little bit more in detail about some of these a little bit later on. Sorry, it's a little crowded up here. I'm just going to start throwing stuff on the floor. So the first idea I want to talk about is strategic thinking. And it's really critical that your frontline supervisors understand what the strategic plan of your organization is. They're the ones that are going to have to align with that mission and that plan, so they need to understand, what that means. So if I could give you an example, let me talk about, a priority. And, in our strategic plan, we have a pillar that talks about evolve our services. And so then we break it down into a 1-year plan. And the objective for the frontline supervisor might be that they're increasing the communication skills of their team. So that's an example of how your frontline supervisors need to align with your strategic plan. I think team building and leading. One of the main responsibilities of a frontline supervisor is to manage the people on their team. Effective supervisors are able to accomplish goals by influencing the actions, decisions, and thinkings of others. So trust is a big piece, and I don't think there's anything new for people to understand, but trust is a big piece of, the members of the team. And really, when you think about the team building, it's really the supervisor's role to take all those individual ideas, agendas, and weave them into one stream that leads to the strategic priority. Organizational savvy. I'm sure we all have it. And this is really about building relationships and relationships and being able to collaborate with the others on your team. So it may be other frontline supervisors. And again, it's about navigating those individual agendas and being able to make the right influences to accomplish the goal. So what this slide says is the ability to build relationships and collaborate with other frontline supervisors across the organization is critical. Managing internal stakeholders and navigating organizational politics to achieve goals are key competencies for frontline supervisors. Personal leadership and awareness. Supervisors who understand their own strengths, weaknesses, biases, and working styles are better equipped to influence and interact effectively with their own team and colleagues who have different working styles and personalities. This is a lot about self-reflection. And I think that, when Paula gets into speaking a little bit later, we'll talk a little bit about, what happens in the course around some of these ideals. Communication. Oh, Let me catch up with my communication. As a leader on the front line, you need to be able to communicate well with your manager, but also with your direct reports and people supported. Effective communication requires both empathy and assertiveness. Communicating with presence allows you to get your message across in an appropriate and authoritative way. And I think the bottom line here is if you do not have the ability to communicate, nothing else you do is going to matter. So this slide reads, coaching and emotional intelligence. The role of a leader isn't to be a commander, but instead be a facilitator. The one who creates the conditions that will allow their teams to thrive. Part of being a great leader and coach is providing team members with ongoing, meaningful feedback to objectively communicate what employees are doing well and what needs to be worked on. And I think that, Mike Lipkin, when we listened to his presentation yesterday, talked a lot about, coaching. It's not about being the boss. It's about, mentoring and coaching those people that you're supporting. So this sort of brings us to the Sensity Leadership Institute. And just to kind of give you the backstory on it, in our sector, we recognized that we were really struggling with frontline supervisors. And certainly they didn't have the tools in their toolbox. And so there was a number of agencies that came together. We formed an advisory committee. We went to our trusted colleague, Paula, and we worked to develop a curriculum that would support the sector. The other piece that we thought was really important is succession planning. Some of us, not speaking for myself, are getting a little long in the tooth, and we have to start looking at who are coming up behind us and what are the skills they're going to need to be successful leaders. So I'm going to bring Paula up now, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about, what the course entails, and then a little bit about the outcomes of the first cohorts that have taken the course. Paula?
Thanks, Kathy. And if you ever want to know the difference between Kathy and Paula, is that I don't have purple hair, and I'm taller. Taller. I'm going to share with you the process of what it's like to be a participant in the Sensity Leadership Institute from the perspective of the content that we taught. But our first slide, is to just capture the idea behind what this institute is intending to do. It's intending to take supervisors and managers who are relatively new in their roles or are seasoned in their roles but curious about learning to be better in their roles, and to transfer knowledge from the content of being good leaders into their brains. But that, all of you know, is not enough. The process has to include the adaptation to practice that improves how we lead. So knowing it and doing it are two different things. So first goal is Sensity Leadership Institute will have knowledge transfer and then will also translate into actual practice. We want to make sure that we are retaining employees, and there was a Gallup international survey of 10,000 organizations worldwide that said that organizations that lose people don't really leave the organization. They actually leave their immediate supervisors. So that the relationship is not just about skill. The relationship is about being human, caring about the people that you work with and for. And this shouldn't surprise us when we're in human services. This practice then has to translate into relationship building and trust so that we can retain good people. The challenges that face us around recruitment will be never ending. one of the most powerful ways of addressing those challenges is to have good relationships, stronger retention, better engagement, so that we don't have to hire people that don't exist. And then finally, as Kathy mentioned, succession planning. It would be really nice if the people that stay with us in leadership roles want to stay with us for a really long time. This is not a McJob. This is a career path. If we can keep people long enough and inspire them to stay, giving them the skills and the support that they need to be successful in their roles, then I think we can move mountains in terms of how our sector evolves over time. So what do you expect when you come into the Sensity Leadership Institute? You expect that you'll have 3 online modules. This was built out of the reality of the pandemic. We piloted our first 2 cohorts through the middle of the pandemic. So the first 3 modules are delivered online, and the second 3 modules are delivered in person. The pandemic lifted, and despite some delays, we were able to move that forward. We decided through feedback from participants that that model actually worked. So we've retained it into our 3rd cohort, and we're continuing to deliver a mix of in-person and online instruction. There's over 100 hours in the 6 modules. So this is not a kind of come to a workshop, go away, take whatever you can or can't, and try and practice it. This is really a deep dive into many of the areas of leadership that are important. We have individual coaching session with each one of the participants. There's somewhere between 15 and 20 participants in each cohort that comes through the Sensity Leadership Institute, and all of them have access to me in one-on-one coaching in addition to the actual class time that we spend together. We have about 18 months of instruction to cover that 100 hours. And we have self-reflection exercises. We have read an article, write an assignment. We have lots of stuff where people have to engage. We have what we call a capstone project. Those of you who have done advanced education know that that's a big project that you have to present in front of people, which is a challenge for some people. But what we do know is that part of leadership is public speaking. And so the whole idea of being in leadership and not being able to stand up in front of a group of your peers and present is probably a skill set that we would miss if other was there. We do lots of role playing. We do lots of practice. We have some fun exercise when we get to the team building and the communication kinds of things, as you might imagine. And we also do case studies. So people take a look at a written, captured, hypothetical kind of example, and they either have to write an assignment about that. And all of our assignments aren't too daunting. They're 1 page. And for students that like to go over 1 page, I just say, I just read the first page. So get it done in a page, right? So that's about self-discipline. It's about writing skills, a variety of other things are taught in that process. And they also have to do a book report. Leaders are readers. All of us who are in leadership roles need to continue that lifelong learning that Jen talked about. And it's really important when we do the leadership training that we get people reading. And it surprised me that we got a little pushback, didn't we, Kathy, from some people that said they have to read 1 book in 18 months, and some people felt that was too much. Right? So that tells you something about the acquisition of knowledge being part of the practice of leadership, that in order to stay ahead and to understand what good leadership is about, the knowledge, acquiring knowledge, and being able to be an ongoing learner is important. I'm not going to, because time won't allow us, but you will have these slide decks available to you from the conference, so this list is available to you, but I'm going to give you the highlights from each one of the modules so you get a feel for the content. The first module is really about, I'm going to use my small notes here. So the first module is really an introduction to leadership, and you're free to take photos if you want.
Sorry.
Okay.
We just need a microphone. It's a bit painful, so we just want to have auditory
Okay.
input.
Do you want me to wear that? Is that going to help you at all?
I might need to bring her closer then if she... Can we test?
We can. Test, test, test. Test, test. We're good?
Got it.
Okay.
I'll go back to it.
You bet. Okay, are we still good? Awesome. Thank you for your help. Okay, so Module 1 is an introduction to leadership. We talk about the difference between leadership and management. We talk about the challenges that leaders are faced in their time today. We talk also about being a catalyst for change, that change is part of what leadership does. And so that's a very important piece of this. We start to talk about leadership styles and the practical part of being what we call a situational leader. And the whole idea that situational leadership is about choosing the right leadership style with the right person, depending on the situation that someone is in. We talk 25 strategies that great leaders employ, and we spread that through the entire program as well. We talk about strategies for remote supervision. We are increasingly a hybrid model of workplaces, and we have a large number of people who are not just in a residential environment or vocational environment or an office environment. And so they are doing supervision of people who are itinerant, who are moving around the community, and that is really difficult for them because it does disrupt relationship building. And so we talk about strategies that will help with that. We talk about managing employee performance. We're talking about feedback, and we do a deeper dive on feedback in another module, but it's a really important piece to build in, and is how to be constructive and critical at the same time. That good feedback tells what somebody did or didn't do, but it also tells them what they need to do better or differently in the future. Whoops. Okay, Module 2 then is all about retention. If people don't leave their employers, they leave their immediate supervisors, then the hands of the supervisor are on influencing retention. And this can be a tough sell for some people who believe that their bigger system is what is supposed to be retaining people. So this is a whole section that says, okay, that's true. Kathy Prohl, as the CEO of Sensity, sets the tone for the overall organization well-being. But what do I do at a line level, hands-on, that changes whether or not people want to come to work the next day and a year from the next day? So this is a really important module because it really says I can influence for the better the level of engagement and the sense of connection and the trust that exists that will help retain people. And for those of you that like literature, it is literature and science-based, it's research-based, but the other part of it is it's practice-based. This has to be something that people can learn and then take to work the next day when they're coming through the program. We talk about then personal pieces that are about self-reflection, about stress management, about resilience, about self-care. Now, I mentioned the capstone projects. Capstone projects are of the learner's choosing. And this cohort that we are in the middle of right now, 80% of our capstone projects are about this. They are about the whole area of self-care and the whole practice of leadership helping others be retained, not just me feel good and not stressed. So it's a very deep dive. I think the students who have come through this module, which is a virtual module, so it is 12 weeks, right, of 6 sessions. And so it takes a while to get us through this material. By the time they have finished this module, they've had enough of self-care. Right? It's like, okay, I get it, Paula, I get it, right? Okay, so we talk about the difference between being resilient and managing stress, and we talk a little bit about time management and priority management and a whole variety of things. But this is our one really reflective module in the entire program. Our fourth module then is all about teams and trust. This is a live module, as you might imagine. We play games. We do stuff around team building. We practice what trust looks like. And we look at the whole notion of psychological safety as a key component of trust. For those of you familiar with psychological safety, it's really about the freedom and feeling of comfort that I can go against the grain or speak up and say something that might be controversial without any fear of retaliation. That I can like something really big that might be not in the culture of the organization, or I can dislike something really big that is in the culture of the organization, and it's okay to say so. There's a huge body of research that says psychological safety is an important factor in employee retention. And psychological safety, as you all know from inside your organization, is created by the people who are in leadership roles. So very important piece in Module 4. So the whole notion about how that works. And we talk about dysfunctional teams and what dysfunctional teams look like and how to get them out of that hole. Because this is a deep hole for some people. People stay because of relationships. They stay because of the relationships with their teams as well as with their supervisors. And so if your team is not functional, very often you lose your best members of your team first. Because they can write their own ticket and go to work someplace else down the block. And what we do want to do is to say if we have a healthy team and we have healthy leadership, the chance of retaining people is very high. Module 5 is an interesting module because we talk about conflict and we talk about what conflict isn't. A lot of what people say is conflict is actually performance issues of other people. Right? There's a wonderful expression that says that everyone is someone's difficult person. Right. And so what people sometimes think is team conflict is actually underperforming employees that has been unaddressed. So we start to mine down and figure out where do we actually have conflict, because there is legitimate conflict we need to address, but where do we have issues that are performance related that perhaps for generations of supervisors before you have not been dealt with. And that's a skill set issue, but we are practicers of avoidance in all sorts of things, right? And leadership is one of those areas where we can practice avoidance and it's not very helpful. And we talk then about the 5 whys as a problem-solving tool. And in Module 5, they have to do a presentation for 7 minutes of the book that they have read. But it's not like grade 12 where you have to give your book report. It's what insights did you take and what practice will change because of what you read. That appears to be harder than a book report. You have to read it and you have to say what part sticks to me, right? What part sticks to me? And this is their first experience for many of them at public speaking. And they have to endure a 5-minute presentation and then a 2-minute question and answer from their peers, from their fellow students, who by this time they know pretty well. That doesn't mean they're less scared. Right? And it's fascinating, the books that people choose. And my only criteria, I don't even know what books they've chosen other than you have to tell me the title and it has to relate to leadership for you in some way. In some way. Right? And so it's really about what do we learn that from when we're choosing our own path, when we're choosing the own things that are there. This is a warm-up, and they know it, to the whole notion of doing their capstone presentation, which is Module 6. And Module 6 in capstone is a 30-minute presentation. Their capstone project has several criteria. It has to be about leadership. It has to, in a practical way, prove that you moved the needle in some way for yourself, for your team, or for your organization. Right? And the third criteria is you have to research it. So you can't just make up something and then do it off the top of your head. So this is getting people then to say, if I want to do self-care strategies, what are some of the most powerful self-care strategies? How am I going to apply that inside my organization? And then finally, how did I do at that application? So there has to be some measurement that says we've moved the needle. And students will tell you from cohort 1 and 2 that the number of times I say move the needle in 6 modules, they get tired of it. But the whole idea is that, as Kathy said, one of the strategies that we're working at with Sensity Leadership Institute is to actually create change makers. Right? Not just acceptors of change, but people who know how to manage change inside their organization. So when we do the capstone, it has multiple layers of value for both the participants and for the organizations. Now, the presentation is done with all of the senior leaders from their sponsoring organizations in a room for a whole day. So it's really fun. And there's enough anxiety in that room to make people feel kind of panicky sometimes and kind of okay other times. But what they know is they're one of 20 people in that room who have to stand at that podium for that moment of time, and that everyone in that room has their back. It's probably one of the most supportive leadership experiences that anybody has ever had, is to know that whatever your research was, however you move the needle, however scared you are, however pretty or ugly your slide deck is, that everyone in this room is in your corner and wanting you to succeed. And it is uniformly reviewed by the people who gave us feedback from the first 2 cohorts as one of the best experiences of the entire, which probably tells you something about my quality of my instruction. I don't know. So we did some pre-test, post-test to see if we're doing any good. It would be a good thing if we did some good. And so the pre-test, post-test on a 15-item quiz that they would have no knowledge of because it's sitting on my laptop on a SurveyMonkey file. And what we found was cohort 1 and 2, who completed an average of 77% of the questions correct. To be honest, I was disappointed. Kathy never told me how she felt about it, but I think she felt okay. And then we asked cohort 3 exactly the same questions before they started, and they got 52% right. So that would be about what you would expect if you just guessed at every answer, right? So half right, half wrong would be about what you would expect. So no better than guessing. And then we did a survey of all of the people who came through the first 2 cohorts and asked them, what would you change? What worked? What could be better? What do we spend not enough time on? What we spend too much time on? And they gave us some advice, which was pretty awesome. And then finally, we also, the capstone project, which is what we call Module 6, was part of that process. So just wanted to share with you some of the things that people said, and for interpreters and interveners, I am going to read these verbatim. So this came from the anonymous survey that was done following cohorts 1 and 2. Said, what was the best thing about SLI? They said the teamwork, the peers, the friendships, having different levels of participation from our agency, having from intervener to directors, very powerful. It made me feel heard. It made me feel hear them. Next quote is, the course covered many different aspects of the leadership role, including self-care strategies. Other courses I've taken have not focused on self-care as a leader. I felt this was relevant, and it is an important topic to focus on for leadership, for effective leadership. And the final quote for this slide, the leadership content, I learned a lot. This was the first course I had taken like this, and it started very shortly after I'd started in my role as an intervener services coordinator. I think that I learned a lot, and I find myself actually using the skills with my team. That's the example of knowledge transfer followed by. Final quotes. I've recommended this course to my colleagues. Sorry, I'll get you on that slide. I would tell them the things that I learned. These are the things that would they recommend to a friend or a colleague. I would tell them that the things I learned were truly invaluable. I would also tell them that the people they meet will become people they can lean on in the future when you're struggling and need advice. And the final quote is, do it. You have a strong, supportive team of like-minded individuals who will be there for you along the way. The tools and resources provided with each will teach you a lot about the type of leader you want to become. So, questions, comments from the group? Don't be shy.
I think we probably need to pass them around.
Okay. Jen's got that portable one.
Thank you so much, ladies, for your wonderful presentation. I'm simultaneously filled with excitement at what a wonderful initiative it is, and despair that we don't have something similar in Australia. I work for Census in Western Australia. It's quite an isolated part of Australia, and we have a small
deafblind services team, which is made up of allied health professionals, but we also provide the training for our version of interveners, which is communication guides. And I've been trying I'm one of those long in the teeth people that you mentioned that would like to retire one day, and have been trying to get some transition planning into place over the last few years, and have been trying to get some training similar in context to this within our team, so that I can leave comfortable that there are people in place in West Australia to carry on the good work that we've done for so many years there. And I guess my question and my barrier has been in getting this finalised is, how do you fund it? We've sort of talked about, study leave, different ways that we can, because it's a lot of time. The program that we've developed is about 70 hours over 12 months with the mentoring, etc., etc. And it's really, how do you fund that? Because that's been the barrier that I've been facing ever since.
I can speak to that from our agency. And typically, we have a pillar that really is about invest in your team and in our strategic plan. And so when we're setting our operational budget for the year, we actually set aside, this is very important to us, it's a key component, so we actually strategize and put those funds directed to this type of training. It costs money to really sort of...
Where 11% of our business base is deafblind. The rest of our organisation is across all disabilities, so we're this small little arm. I am excited to say we do have a new strategic plan, and deafblind is all over it. So I'm hopeful to be able to have that exact attitude moving forward with the organisation. But thank you very much.
The other comment I would make on that is, I would wager a guess that, the other sectors of your organisation probably could use this training as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Can I just add to that, Kathy? Kathy has an entrepreneurial soul.
Do I?
And this cohort we're teaching now is not just people who come from the deafblind part of the sector. So I think that a part of this goal is to say it could be self-funded if we charge registrations to people from outside DB and inside the general sector of disability services, or even a little bit broader than that. Healthcare education is what I would go. And so it's partially more self-funded.
Michelle Stevens here from Deafblind Victoria. We run Deafblind World workshops specifically for people who are hearing, seeing, and we actually charge organisations to run these workshops. So I don't know whether perhaps if this gives Karen idea where you can actually charge other organisations to attend the training workshops. So, DBV, we actually charge organisations, for instance, Melbourne City Council, Lend-Lease Group, which is a huge organisation that they come and do training, particularly experiencing deafblindness is a really great way for them to learn about leadership, trust, to value someone in their team. And this is something that we sort of work on. Thank you.
And if I could just respond to that, the other side of our training is actually we've developed curriculum and online training specifically to, intervener services and deafblindness. So, and we do charge a fee for service. So if it's an agency that is joining us that is not a participant of Sensity, then they actually do pay a fee But thank you.
Thank you. Just to request the question for a fee for service, is there going to be a link that we can actually follow up if we're interested in finding out what that would actually be for training for out of province?
Yes, Paul and I would both be happy to leave our business cards with you. We didn't actually embed a link in the presentation, but if anyone's interested in more information, be happy to share that with you. Yeah, they're already available in the hub of the conference. So if you actually, all of the presentations are, I think, available now, if I'm not mistaken. There also will be video recording after the conference on the DBNO website. All of the sessions will be available there as well. Audio, yes. Sorry. Yeah, I didn't see any cameras pointing at us.
Hello, good morning. First of all, thank you for your presentation. It's been really interesting for me. I would like to ask you, did you have ever organized a training, this type of training for deaf-blind leaders, for deaf-blind people? I think that it must be something different from them, but I don't know if you have worked with deaf-blind people. Because maybe I think you might need to use different tools, different adaptation. Do you have any experience related to it?
So if I could just understand your question, you wondered about whether or not we have a different tool or have created a different tool for individuals who are deaf-blind that might be leaders.
Yes, I mean that maybe the way of training them to communicate with them is much more limited. So maybe we might need different tools, different ways of making communication and training more fluent. I don't know if you...
Yeah, thank you. So I'll take this one, Paula. So yeah, this has really been a pilot. We've done 2 completed cohorts. We have a third one underway. So we're really that's an interesting concept and one I wouldn't rule out. But we're not there yet. We haven't developed the curriculum any further. But I would suspect that might be part of my entrepreneurial spirit.
We'll team up with you, Kathy.
Any other questions?
Are there any more questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Paula and Kathy, for your amazing presentation. I actually had the fortune to participate in the development of the SLA project, so and I'm happy that we, as at Canadian Helen Keller Centre, can send people through the program. I think we've sent 3 now. So it's really a fantastic initiative, especially in a sector where we do a lot of promotion from within. I think it's very important that we recognize people with knowledge of deaf blindness and experience so that they're supervising those people who are working on the front lines, because they also have to have the knowledge. So in a sector where promotion from within is very, very big, this is very, very important. So,
and without speaking out of turn, I would absolutely welcome a call, and I know Kathy would welcome a call if you want to create something similar in your communities. There's a whole committee of people who are senior managers in the deafblind sector behind this initiative that come from multiple organizations that Jen spoke about, who were my advisors in the process of building the curriculum, who created and helped me create the material and the topics that you saw in the short slides that were there. And that was so instrumental in being able to get this right. My only claim to fame in deaf blindness is that I was born on Helen Keller's birthday, and I felt this magnetic connection to be part of this sector. And so it took more than just two people on the stage today to design this. It was Kathy's brainchild. It was something that we created out of people's heads that is still in its early infancy, and it's baby steps time, right? We're just nicely through the pilot. But if I can, or if Kathy can, give you any support in being able to share how we did it, the story behind the story today, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, Kathy and Paula. And I have a small gift to present to you for speaking today.
Kathy knows what this is. I have no idea. Thanks.
Thank you both. Thank you.